engagement isn't just a like button or a heart or a share or whatever. Those are definitely parts of the signals, but it's also where you stop scrolling on the screen and what you're watching. Even for like milliseconds, it might not seem like a lot, but that's where the algorithms are going. So that's, that's the little nerd thing. I just thought it was interesting that you bring this up, considering this came up in my text chains the other day. But it comes back to this idea of content. Everybody wants to go viral. So it's like most people don't want to put their face on something. We'll talk about that. But then the few people that are thinking about creating content, then they immediately think like, how do I go viral? What does that even mean? It's alarmingly simple. It's like, can you really strike a chord of a conversation that maybe people are already having in private, but maybe
Yes.
not willing to have publicly?
And it's the
Um,
it's the problem. Do you actually understand the problem? Because most
right.
people feel that they have a very strong solution, right? You don't go through the process of creating a business or a product or any sort of, offering to the world without thinking you're solving some major problem. The real problem is, do you actually understand it? And the thing that I find social media to be so awesome at is it'll tell you very quickly if you understand the problem, because they're going to tell you either by not paying any attention to what you're saying or responding harshly or responding positively. You get that
Yes.
feedback instantly. And if you pay attention to that feedback and act on it,
Yeah.
you can get better.
This is such an interesting conversation because, to your point, like, I remember a long time ago, something somebody said to me on this topic was this guy happened to be near a whiteboard, and the conversation was like, we were talking about how do we know if our content's working. This is maybe 10, 15 years ago when Twitter was just taking off. This is like before TikTok and all that stuff. So we were talking and we are like, oh, how do we know it's going to work or not? How do we know like people like it or not? And I remember this guy, he was standing there. He's actually one of my business partners now, but he drew two dots on the whiteboard and he wrote the word love on one and hate on the other. And he said, what does a line like this between these 2 points look like? And I was like, Dave, that's the dumbest question in the world. It's just a straight line. I mean, what are we talking about here? And he actually then drew like a trough. So he connected them with a trough, and he drew a little arrow to the bottom of the trough, and he said, "This is the zone of indifference." And I was like, "What does that mean? What are you talking about?" And he's like, do you ever, like, when you think about somebody you love or you hate, they're over here on either point, but everybody else you've forgotten about. You pay no attention to them, no mental cycles to them or whatever. And he said, you'll know when it's really working because you either have the trolls or the people that love you come out. You're always going to have both. But he said, you also, the part that nobody talks about, he says, if something's not working, if you're not getting engagement, you just have to admit that you're in the zone of indifference. Nobody cares.
Nobody
The
cares.
algorithms aren't going to deliver that. Nobody's going to deliver that. It's just not going to go anywhere. And so,
Right.
and then I remember I was like, where are we going with this? And he goes, Paul, ultimately you have to take responsibility for not being interesting. And it was just like kind of a shocking thing to hear. This is years ago. Like, it was such a shocking thing to hear because I guess in my mental model, I'll just, hopefully maybe I represent some subset of the population. In my mental model, I guess I was taught that being polite means you pay attention to people, I guess. But then
Hmm.
you realize, like, as you grow up, you don't really do that. Like some
Right.
people, and so I don't know. It's kind of like a rambly way of saying, like, I think you're right. I don't think enough people talk about this, and especially in the healthcare world, where you have people that spent so much time getting educated in sort of like what I call no fail kind of missions, where it's kind of like, hey, if you do this wrong, you could hurt somebody. And so you're trained like that. The but the problem is the media mindset requires an iterative mindset where it's
Yes.
like, let's try a bunch of stuff, we'll figure out what works, we'll do more of that, we'll cut the rest, and then you do it over and
Yep.
over. It's like an iterative mindset. Um,
Very different. It's a
yeah,
very different place, and I fell into that, where I was so cautious about do no harm that I was fearful of stepping out of what were the traditional comfort zones of an occupational therapist, and it wasn't until I started testing the waters with things that were a little bodacious, a little wild, a little weird looking that I had never seen or touched or worked with, and started showing the world that stuff that people were like, "Oh, what the heck is," and that's where the
What's an
eyeballs
example of that,
started.
by the way? When you say like just what you were talking about, you tried new things. Like what's an example in hindsight of that?
Well, so one of the things I was so focused on was like, I knew the questions people were asking over and over again. And so initially I focused on answering those questions, which was good, but not great. That was good for creating some useful content for those folks, but it wasn't moving the needle as far as getting more eyeballs drawn in because those questions, everyone was asking them. Like you say, they were sitting kind of in a zone of indifference. They were
Yeah.
useful to a few people. So what I started doing was finding things that looked like, for example, there's this cane variety that came out on the market that had this extra handle on it that you could flip down. So if you were sitting down, you had a low spot to grab and a high spot to grab. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever. What the heck are I'm ordering it? So I ordered it thinking I would hate it, being like, this is so stupid. Why does anyone need this? And immediately was like, huh, I don't know that I'm getting the whole picture here. So I put it through the paces. I put it on the floor. I'm testing it out. I get my grandma involved. I'm like, Grandma, what do you think of this? Getting feedback. And I realize I need to just show the world this and just see what they think. And it was exactly what I expected in the sense that you got that. I got the, I hate this. That's useless. And then I got the, I totally see why this exists. And because I peaked those two sides and I wasn't stuck in the trough, that video took off because it started a conversation and I didn't feed anybody my opinion of it. At no point did I say I love this. I just said this exists and it has this and this and this was the thought process behind it. What do you think? And boom, it triggered that reaction for people to have either a positive or a negative or something in between, and it started a conversation. And that was really products like that are been my bread and butter of getting the algorithm to understand me as a point of interest.
Is it fair to say, and you can totally like shoot me down on this. Is it fair to say that, so I forget what that product was called, but like so let's call that one a win, right? You tried something new and it was a win, and a win being defined as it triggered a response from an audience, people started looking at it and all that. Is it fair to say that like for every win you've had like that there's probably 5 fails,
5 to
10
10.
fails?
5
Yeah,
to 10. In our house, my husband and I call them, we have our bunts where it's just like, I just had to get a video out because consistency does matter and not
right,
everything's going to be a home run.
right.
We've got our singles, we've got our doubles, we have the range and you're not going to hit a grand slam on every single post. Sometimes you'll get surprise grand slams that you didn't see coming. And other times you'll have videos that you thought I've had products where I was like, this is such a bizarre. This is going to get so many eyeballs, so much interest, and just
It's just
radio
flat, yeah,
silence.
it's
Could be the
flat.
timing, could be that it just was only interesting to me. But you have to keep getting up to bat. Every so often, you have to keep going up to bat. And so I think that, that combination of mindset has really helped me to understand how to make social media work as a major marketing tool. And then
Yeah,
also treat
yeah.
my audience with respect in a way of saying, you guys and your opinions of these things that I'm sharing with you matter to me. I'm not just a pro out here telling you what you should know. I'm out here showing you because I want your feedback. Come to me, talk to me. And that has spurred on a great deal of really high value followers.
If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and RCM works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.